point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to what is this? The 557th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. Tom is not here today, and I'm going to have to kind of do this without him. So what we have here is a show that is basically news aggregation about energy and climate change. The news is all material that I've put up at my blog, geoharvey.com. And the blog, you can find it at geoharvey.com. If you go to geoharvey.com and click on the date on the calendar for the day that I'm talking about, you will see usually 15 articles, and you can find the article that I'm talking about and go to it and read it in full. Also, for the sake of organizing the show, there's another website that Tom and I use to prepare the show, and a text file of the material that you'd find there for that entry are below. If you're working on a computer screen, you can scroll down and see it. Anyway, we're going to start on January the 18th, which is a week ago today, and end with the news on January 24th, which was yesterday. And we have typically 3 items per day, and in this particular week, that's exactly correct. So we'll start with a picture of a solar of a monarch butterfly on milkweed and a set of solar panels in the background. This article is from Clean Technica, and it's about agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics in action, evidence shows solar panels nurture habitats and farms too. That's the title. An organized effort to stop rural solar development is still sputtering along, but the case for converting marginal farmlands into clean energy powerhouses is getting stronger. The key element is the emerging science of agrivoltaics, which nurtures farms. All right. You know, this is something that I've been keeping the blog since 2012, June of 2012, almost 14 years, and almost 12 years. I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't mind me. Very early on, I came to the conclusion that every renewable energy source, if it showed any promise in a given area, had grassroots, in quotes, organizations trying to stop it. Some of these organizations were very clearly not grassroots. They were, in one example, an ostensibly grassroots organization, which was made up almost 100% of utility workers I think it was in New Mexico. In other places, there are other groups of people who have their reasons for wanting to prevent farmers from putting solar panels or wind turbines or whatever on their fields. In Vermont and elsewhere in New England, these efforts have been very successful. That doesn't mean that it's a good idea to prevent solar panels or wind turbines or whatever from going up on the farm. In fact, I'm writing an article about this for Green Energy Times right now, in which the people UVM are growing various things under solar panels, between solar panels, and so forth. Saffron was one of the things that they started with, but they're doing beets and carrots and peas, other things. The thing that there's two important issues here. One of which is we need the alternate energy. We cannot run on fossil fuels because of the damage that it does to the environment and to human health and climate change. The other issue is that farmers need to get incomes, and in many cases they can increase their farm income quite a lot by putting solar panels in agrivoltaics situations. Agrivoltaics is the combination of agriculture and photovoltaics. And they can have an only slightly reduced production of agricultural products, or possibly an increased production. The research that was done in Germany at the Fraunhofer Institute showed that the production of tomatoes under solar panels actually increased from what they did in the next field over in broad daylight, because tomatoes prefer a certain amount of shade. Anyway, this article deals with that. So I'm going to go on to the next article, which is from ABC News. And here is a picture of Montana. And the title is Montana Supreme Court upholds climate ruling that said emissions can't be ignored. The Montana Supreme Court has rejected an attempt by the state's Republican governor to block a landmark climate ruling that said regulators must consider the effects of greenhouse gas emissions when issuing permits for fossil fuels development. This is an important issue. And in fact, the same thing happened nationally. I think it came out today, relating to natural gas, liquefied natural gas terminals on the Gulf of Mexico. The EPA or whoever is issuing the permits has to consider not just how this installation is going to affect people currently, but the question is, how is it going to affect the environment, human health, and so forth. So this is an important issue. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. Here is a picture of bison. This comes from Yale Climate Connections. The title is A Cash Crop That Never Runs Out. The 7,000-acre Farrell Ranch in Beaumont, Kansas has 50 wind turbines. 50 wind turbines on one farm is a lot. The ranch had survived years when drought dried up income by relying on oil revenues, but today the wind turbines are providing reliable cash crop for the ranch. Yale Climate Connection spoke with Pete Farrell. Now, if you go to the original article, you can read that interview. I would note, I'm going to switch back to that picture. I want you to notice that one of these bison, the one closest to the photographer, has a tag hanging from his ear. And this is a domestic crop. This is a domestic herd of bison. And you can see the wind turbines in the background. This expands a little bit on what I was saying on the article immediately before it. The farmers are able to, in some cases, the farm is able to continue to operate because of solar power or wind power installed on the farm. And to say that the farmer shouldn't be allowed to do that is basically telling him that he has to go out of business. Okay, we're up to Friday, January 19th, we have a picture of offshore wind turbines. And this is an article from Renews. The title of the article is Europe Celebrates 4.2 Gigawatt Record Offshore Wind Haul. The European offshore wind industry brought online a record 4,200 megawatts, which is 4.2 gigawatts, of offshore wind capacity in 2023. The amount was up 40% from the 1.7 gigawatts installed in 2022, according to figures published by trade association Wind Europe. Of the 4.2 gigawatt total, 3 gigawatts was installed in the European Union. Now, when I read that, of course, I thought to myself, where did the rest get installed? Actually, the UK is no longer in the European Union, and that's where a lot of this was installed. UK is very big on offshore wind. Okay, our next item is from earth.com, and it has a community solar garden in the middle of a field of flowers. The title is Insects Thrive in Restored Habitats Near U.S. Solar Energy Facilities. Researchers from the Argonne National Laboratory and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory went on a mission to explore the ecological impact of photovoltaic and solar energy sites, especially those restored with native grasses and wildflowers. The result is buzzing with life. Now, what's happened here, what they're describing here is you don't have to grow put agricultural products under these arrays. You can put next to them or around them. Just allow the field to go fallow and have wildflowers in it. And in this particular case, the case of this array, which is a community solar garden, the array is surrounded by flowers, and the insects that get into that buzz audibly. This has an effect on agriculture, and the effect is if you have healthy fields of this type, it really makes for a much better habitat for bees and other pollinators. And that in turn will have an effect on agriculture that is done within 3 miles or so of where the beehives are. So if the beehives are under the solar panels, which is a good place for beehives, the bees will go out for was it 3 miles? 1.5 miles for a 3-mile diameter. Maybe it's 1.5 miles and I'm getting things wrong, but a good distance around. The bees will travel around and they will pollinate plants on farms. And so they're good for farm production, even off the site where they are. And that's a good thing. Now, in this case, it's a community solar system, but the study of that system was made, and they found that the pollinating insects just come around because they can. Okay, our next item is from energystorage.news, energy-storage.news. And this is a picture, let me put it up, of Panama City. Now, of course, that is not Panama City, Florida. That is Panama City, Panama. And that looks like a pretty sophisticated place. The title of the article is Panama Launching 500 Megawatt Renewable Energy and Energy Storage Scheme. Panama has launched a 500 megawatt tender auction for renewables and energy storage. the first in Central America to include storage in a tender. Winning bidders are to have projects operational by the 1st of September 2026 for existing renewable projects and new PV plants. So the idea of having really big battery backup plants that are sited together or in partnership with, not necessarily the same place, with renewable energy such as solar and wind, has taken off. I think it was 2017 when the big battery in South Australia was put in as a result of a bet that was undertaken by Elon Musk. He said if he couldn't get a 100 megawatt battery in 100 days from the time that the contract was signed, he would give it to them for free. And that site was functioning 98 days after the contract was signed. And by functioning, I mean it was delivering energy into a grid that needed it. Now, it happens that when you can back up with big batteries, solar and wind, you can have systems that just operate 24 hours a day on solar and wind and batteries. If you are going to have a sizable grid doing this, you probably want other things involved. But, you know, solar and wind and batteries are things that can scale up or down. And I think probably most of the people watching this show, who live in Vermont, probably know people who are off-grid and they are getting all of their electricity from solar panels with batteries. And I've known a number of people who have done that. It's a pretty good deal. It can be cheaper than grid power, and there are a lot of ways that you can tie into the grid to make it less expensive. But anyway, the people in Panama and other parts of the world are starting to look at this and say, yeah, we could do that too. Okay, we're up to Saturday, January 20th, and we have a picture, excuse me, of a large solar and storage system. Let me get it up. And this is from PV Magazine USA. The title is Largest Solar Installer Project in the U.S. Activated. TerraGen and its contractor Mortenson announced activation of the Edwards and Sanborn Solar Plus Storage Project, the largest solar and storage project in the United States. It has a solar capacity of 875 megawatts DC and nearly 3.3 gigawatt hours of energy storage. It is in California and has a 1.3 gigawatt capacity. Now, these numbers, the highest amount of energy that this thing can output is 1.3 gigawatts, or 1,300 megawatts. The solar system has a capacity of 875 megawatts. So that's the most you can get at any given time from solar. And of course, you're not going to get any at night. And the 3.3 gigawatt hours means that this particular battery array can output at the maximum energy. And I don't know that it can output for this amount of time, but because sometimes they start off with the maximum output is half an hour, say, and then it goes to a lower output level that it can do after that. But the 3.3 gigawatt hours means that this array of this battery installation could go for quite a long time. And that means that it has an important effect on the grid. Now, let's go to the next one. This is a picture that I think a lot of people, you know, if you're like me, you look at that and say, I know where that is. And then you realize, no, I really don't know where that is. Anyway, this is from ABC News. And that just looks like so many places I've been in Vermont before the snowplows get through. The title of the article is Why Cold Air Outbreaks Are Still Happening Amid Global Warming. This is an important thing to think about. But here's the synopsis. It may be counterintuitive, but extreme cold blasts, like much of the United States is having, will continue to occur even as global temperatures soar to record levels. Research shows that climate change may bring more frequent and intense heat waves, but freeze events will still happen. Now, I'm going to explain this a little bit. I want you to understand that there's about 8,000 weather stations in the United States, and the first year those weather stations operate, each day there's going to be a record high for the day and a record low for the day at that record station because there's no past record to do for the day. The next year, there's going to be lots and lots of record highs and record lows. The year after that, it'll be fewer. And 20 years in, you're going to go day after day with no records being set, but then you might go several days with records being set every day. Now, when a record is set, that is weather. The question of climate, the way to think about this as climate is how many of those stations are setting record highs and how many are setting record lows. If the climate is not changing, then the number of stations setting record highs should be about the same as the number setting record lows. Should be. As the temperatures warm, you're still going to have record lows. You're just going to have more record highs. And as it happens right now, for every record low day at a weather station we have in the United States, there are about 10 that are record highs. That's climate. It's changing. So that's a problem, and we really have to address it. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica. And we have a picture of a supersized electric truck. This is coming from Scania, which is a Scandinavian truck maker. The title is EU, European Union, reaches deal on near phase out of diesel trucks. In the European Union, lawmakers agreed to carbon dioxide emission targets for heavy-duty vehicles that will phase out almost all sales of new diesel trucks by 2040. Under the new guidelines, manufacturers will have to cut average emissions of new trucks by 40% in 2030, 65% in 2035, and 90% in 2040. So what they're trying to do there is get electric trucks put in place. And of course, that means that the fuel for those trucks will be the fuel for a large amount of trucks will not be burned. It'll come from electricity. And as this happens, more and more electricity is coming from renewable sources, which means that the carbon footprint of the carbon footprint of the electric grid is getting smaller and smaller. And that is because coal is in a steep decline, natural gas is declining as well. We are up to Sunday, January 21st, and we have a picture of wind turbines. This wind farm is in Western Australia. You know, the title says wind farm in WA, and I have to pause when I read that because it could also be Washington State. But, and similarly, Southern Australia is called SA, and South Africa is called SA, so it always gives me pause to see those letters. The title is Southern Western Australia. Western Australia is a state in Australia. It's very, very big. It might be a third of the country, and it is just the west in Australia. But the southern part of that gears up for major renewables energy projects. In southern region of Western Australia, the landscape of renewable energy is witnessing a transformation with two major projects nearing completion. One is the 76 megawatt Flat Rocks wind farm. The other is a groundbreaking pumped hydro project in Walpole, and that is Walpole, Western Australia, not Walpole, New Hampshire. Well, I guess you knew that, but you know, I'm just commenting. Okay, my next picture coming up. I really like this picture. It is so much like places that I played in and walked in and, you know, observed nature and so forth when I was a child. And this is from phys.org, phys.org. And the picture, of course, is old forest growth. The title is Old Forests, Critically Important for Slowing Climate Change, Merit Immediate Protection from Logging. Forests are an essential part of the Earth's operating system. In the United States, forests take up 12% of the nation's greenhouse gas emissions annually and store the carbon long-term in trees and soils. They should be protected as soon as possible. The idea that they're taking up 12% of the nation's greenhouse gas emissions annually is important to understand. We emit a lot of greenhouse gas. These old forests are taking up 12% of the greenhouse gas that we emit every year. That means that we can have a certain amount of fossil fuels being used and still be what is called net negative in terms of our carbon emissions. If we have a way to do it, and old forests provide a good way to do that, that requires a certain amount of wisdom to manage them, but not much more than that. You don't have to invest huge amounts of money in equipment to get the carbon taken down in old forests. So the way that you would, for example, in a carbon sequestration scheme. And it happens, much to our advantage, that it's not just old forests that are doing this. It's also, for example, peat bogs. Peat bogs take down carbon out of the atmosphere much better than the forests do. And by the way, the reason why old forests are important for this is because the young forests have very small trees in them, and the very small trees don't take down as much carbon because they just can't. They don't have all those leaves out. They don't have the tall trunks and the thick trunks and so forth. So it's important that these things be dealt with, managed properly. And in this particular case, the author of the article is saying that the old forests, we should be protected. We should not be harvesting old forests anymore. And it does remind me of an incident when there were forests being cut in Oregon, and the media put out reporters to find out how the loggers felt about this. And they talked with an old logger, and he said he felt very bad cutting down trees. He knew how to cut down trees, and if he were replaced by somebody, that person might not be as good, which means that the danger to human life and the danger of injury would increase if he were not on the job. But he felt bad about cutting the trees anyway, and the reason for that was because he felt close to these trees and he felt that they should be protected. And he made an interesting observation. It was not a serious proposal, but he said that maybe there should be a law saying that nobody should be allowed to cut down a tree that's older than he is. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think that's something to think about. Okay, the next article comes from Clean Technica, and it has a picture of a canoe delivery van. And I got to tell you, it's not my favorite looking van. I think it's kind of dull. Nevertheless, the title of the article is Canoo delivers first of 9,300 electric vans to Kingby. Canoo makes groundbreaking EVs in Oklahoma. For now, it is focusing all its energy on building vans that can be used by tradespeople and delivery services. Walmart is a prime customer, but another customer is Kingby, which just placed an order for 9,300 Canoo LTV 130 delivery vans. And my recollection is, having read this article, Canoo is going to rent these vehicles out. So there you have that. Okay, we're up to Monday, January 22nd. And we have a picture which is just titled Energy. You can see energy being made by wind turbines, and you can see energy being used because you can see the contrails of jets. And I'm going to tell you, because you can see that those contrails dissipate without spreading, you know that they're probably contrails. Now, even if they didn't dissipate without spreading, you wouldn't know that they weren't contrails. But the idea that these are chemtrails is, in my mind, highly improbable. So, and I want to tell you, there were two occasions in my life, because after college, I went into chemistry, and I worked for some time in the chemical industry. And there were a couple of times when I was actually manufacturing aerosols that were distributed in that manner. So, you know, I know some of the things that go into chemtrails because I've actually made them. And I will tell you that if that stuff were released by those jets against that blue sky, you wouldn't see it because the amount of material is so small. And if they were released by any kind of plane, you wouldn't see it regardless, because that was material that was used for seeding clouds, and the plane would be inside the cloud to do the seeding. Anyhow, this article is from Clean Technica, and the title is "The Energy Transition Has Reached a Critical Inflection Point." The transition to net zero is a complex process that requires significant changes to the way we produce, distribute, and consume energy. Many countries and companies have set near net zero targets for greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 or earlier, but the transition has its challenges. Yes, there are challenges, and I think it's easy to imagine what some of those challenges are. I mean, if you're running a utility and you've got power plants that are powered by coal and natural gas, you're operating with a paradigm that involves those plants running full all the time. They cannot cover all of the electric demand for the people they're supplying electricity to, because they are baseload power plants. And the base load is the minimum load. The reason why baseload power plants are called that is because they will cover the minimum load by running at 100% output all the time. But the implication of that is that there's a lot of electricity that is not covered by baseload power plants. Always has been. And that electricity has to come from other sources. And those sources are smaller sources that can be turned on and off and adjusted. The trick to baseload power is that it's cheap, because the plant never had any capacity to adjust the output. Now, with renewable energy and batteries, you can get pretty good electric supply, but you know, the sun doesn't always shine, the moon doesn't always. I always feel like saying the sun doesn't always shine, the moon doesn't always fade. What does the moon do? The wind doesn't always blow, but the thing is, now with batteries and with other sources such as thermal backup from wood burning plants, hydropower is very important in this, and there are a number of other sources that can be used. The backup for solar and wind is basically batteries, which is just a different paradigm from the backup that is also necessary for baseload power plants. So the inflection point does have its challenges because you have to move from the one to the other. And we're not in a situation anymore where the grid operator can call up Joe down at the peaking power plant and say, Joe, we need more electricity, and the person at the peaking power plant turns the plant up. But we can do it partly with computers. We can do a very good job of keeping things going. Okay, the next picture, I really liked this picture. Didn't come with the article. I went and found it. This is an off-the-grid system. Actually, maybe this did come with the article. This is an off-the-grid system in Bangladesh. This is from a publication called Echo Business. The title is Bangladesh Solar Power Surge Set to Unlock Thousands of Green Jobs. That's important for Bangladesh. After years of slack progress, renewable energy in Bangladesh has recently seen a strong turnaround on the back of affordable solar power. Over 3 gigawatts are now in operation. That momentum is expected to create 3,000 to 4,000 new green jobs in the next few years. And that of course is important, but it also shows another thing, which is, you know, I was reading today about how Sizewell C nuclear power plant, the French who are building it for the British are looking for support from the British government for the plant, and it's going to be 6 years more behind schedule. It's already years behind schedule, but it's going to be 6 more. These solar and wind and battery projects go in so fast. They start them in the spring and they're done in the fall with a lot of them. And it's just, it really is remarkable. Bangladesh can have a complete turnaround, and it can happen in a couple of years. Okay, the next picture is a picture simply of weather. That's all it is. Didn't come with the article. This is from Cosmos magazine. The title of the article is A Mostly Renewable Electricity Grid is Highly Feasible. Now, they're talking about Australia here. Australia, and not that the United States is different. Australia's electricity could be over 95% renewable by 2035, according to the latest release of Australia's Electricity Market Operators Integrated Solar Plan. Many people are skeptical, firmly believing that 24/7 baseload generators are essential. And I want to tell you, from my point of view, baseload power has no value. So, you know, I'm just going to tell you that. Not in the paradigm that we're moving into. Anyway, experiments that have been done indicate that those people who are skeptical are wrong. So we're up to Tuesday, January 23rd, and we have a picture of sheep and solar panels. That's a common sight in some places. This is from Clean Technica. The title is Lowering Energy Costs and Emissions in Rural America. Well, we're back to the farm. It's where we started today's show. Updates are needed with climate change. So the NRDC endorsed the REAP Modernization Act, which was introduced by Senators Tina Smith and Ben Lujan, and Representative Abigail Spanberger and David Valadao, and the Rural Equity Act introduced by Senator Peter Welch, oh, I know him, and I know how to pronounce his name, so I don't have to apologize for that. But I will apologize for all of the other names because I probably got all of them wrong. Anyway, this is all part of an effort to get renewable energy projects onto the farm. Again, for the reasons that I stated earlier, partly because we need the energy and partly because the farmers need the money that they can generate by having those systems to keep going. The family farm can survive, but not if you prevent it from making money. So people who are going to prevent it from installing renewable energy should think about that. Now, our next item is from Current News, and we have a picture of wind turbines in a wind farm. And that picture, as I recall, is actually wind turbines in Ireland. The title of this article is Northern Ireland Saves 243 million pounds from wind power in 2023. 243 million pounds, I'm just going to guess that that's about $300 million or a little more. Wind energy, Ireland, with the help of energy specialists, Baranga, reported that Northern Ireland wind farms saved 243 million pounds in 2023. The Irish Renewable Energy Organization confirmed its annual report that 35% of the whole island's electricity was provided by wind farms. 35% was provided by wind farms. That means that they could save probably something like $800 million, $900 million a year if they got it all converted. Wind Energy Ireland, I want to explain that the energy grid in Ireland, as I understand it, is tied to the energy grid the grid in Northern Ireland is tied to the grid in the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland is not tied to the grid in the UK, so the numbers are very different. But Ireland has been getting more and more energy from its wind farms as time goes by. Okay, we have an article from Clean Technica coming up and a picture of a Volkswagen ID Buzz. And I can tell you, Volkswagen is pronounced Volkswagen in Germany, but ID Buzz, I'm sorry, that's not what it's called in German. A buzz, the Z is not pronounced the way Americans pronounce Z's, for one thing. BEV sales, that is battery electric vehicle sales, shoot past all expectations in Brazil in December, rise 700%. Not long ago, Brazil's battery EV sales were just symbolic, a fraction of a fraction. Actually, you could say they were a fraction of a percent. But the second half of 2023 has broken record after record, breaking all expectations and closing in on 3% battery EV share of the overall automobile market in December for 700% growth year on year. So they went from next to nothing to 3% in 1 year. And it happens that the figure that represents that growth is 7%. But, when you start talking about numbers in that range, a 700% growth, 1,000% growth, what if you go from 2 vehicles to 2,000? That's big growth in terms of percentages. But it might not be up, you might not be up to 1% if the 2,000 vehicles are part of a market that has 500,000 vehicles in it. So, there are a couple of terms that I always say those should raise flags for people, saying you have to be careful about what it means. And percentages is one, and another is efficiency. You don't know what efficiency means unless you really know what it means. and it's going to mean something very different in one context than it does in another. It's if you're comparing efficiency or growth or things like that, it's really easy to get into comparing apples and oranges, or apples and lettuce, or apples and sawhorses, or whatever. Okay, our next picture is a picture of, you think that's a mountain and snow. According to the caption for the picture, that is snow, an F-150 in snow. However, I should mention we're up to Wednesday, January 24th, and this article came from Clean Technica. So I'll give you the picture of the F-150 in snow again. The title is Brighter, Whiter Snow Could Help Offset Global Warming. PNNL scientists study why. While research has shown that global warming is leading to a decline in snowpacks, a study by Pacific Northwest National Laboratory suggests the news may not be as grim as originally thought. Expectations for cleaner snow is one reason. Now, this is interesting. I remember hearing years ago that the snow in Poland in some places was black. What had happened was the snow would fall overnight, and then the soot that was coming from coal burning power plants in Germany and Poland would come in and just cover it with, the ground would be covered with snow, and the children would go out and play in black snow. That black snow captures a lot of heat, which melts the snow. But if we're not burning coal anymore, and we're burning, if we're not burning coal anymore, and we're not engaged in really sooty diesel emissions and things like that, that snow is going to be white, and it's going to reflect a lot of light, and that mitigates climate change, and that's just a fact. It makes things a lot easier. So that fact is something that the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and the others have been studying and finding. Yeah, we've got many reasons to move away from fossil fuels, and climate change is just one of them. There are many reasons. Human health is another. This is a complicated issue that goes on and on and on. And acid rain is another. I remember when a school near where I lived as a teenager, it had statues that were made of marble, and they were out on the grounds, and they brought them all inside because they had discovered they were dissolving in acid rain. They replaced them with similar statues that had been cast in concrete. We've got lots of reasons not to be burning coal, particularly, and the combustion of many of the fossil fuels produces a lot of acid. Carbon dioxide mixed with water is carbonic acid, but there's also NOx and the nitric and nitrous output from combustion, and sulfur, not very high quality fuel has sulfur in it. So let's go on. We have a picture of coffee beans. This was an extremely interesting article I found. This is from the BBC. Excuse me. New coffee genetic map promises better brews. The most complete genetic map yet of Arabica coffee was pieced together by researchers in Italy. Arabica coffee is the world's most popular drink. New insights into the plant's genetic code will help in breeding new coffee crops, and they may lead to coffee plants that can cope better with a warming world. And I find that really easy to believe. I find it easy to relate to. There are, in the article, there are multiple ways in which this can be done. If you know the genetic code, then you have some understanding of places where the coffee can be grown. And I was surprised at the variety of places where coffee is grown. Apparently, a lot of coffee beans are grown in Australia. As the climate changes, the coffee plants are having to be grown on higher and higher parts of mountains in Central America and South America. And this is something that the older farms have been closing down because they can't support the plants anymore because the plants don't like that kind of heat. But there are other things too, and the other things talk about what the coffee tastes like and things of that nature. And, you know, where I'd been thinking as I buy coffee that maybe that I'm enjoying something that my grandchildren will not be able to enjoy at my age. It might be that they will be able to do that. So there you have it. The other thing is, I have been drinking coffee that is mixed with chicory, roasted chicory recently, which I like the flavor of better than just the flavor of coffee. And when they're a 50-50 blend, it means that this is like coffee that's half decaffeinated. Much stronger, though, flavor than straight coffee. Okay, we are up to our last item for the week. And in this case, we have a view of the inside of a tractor that's out on a field. This is from Clean Technica. We're getting back to the farm. The title is More Internet Access from Elon Musk's Starlink Can Enhance Sustainable Agri-Tech. The rise in precision agriculture could boost yields and profit margins while reducing reliance on fertilizer and other inputs, among other benefits. A hitch is the fact that 30% of farm acreage in the United States does not have reliable Wi-Fi access. What? I would have thought that it would be like 98% of it wouldn't have Wi-Fi access. But apparently you can do the, Wi-Fi for a lot of this. The Wi-Fi access makes it possible for operations that cannot be done without it. Anyway, Starlink, Elon Musk's Starlink, can handle that Wi-Fi access. So what's happening here is we're getting into a time in agriculture when perhaps we don't need all of the herbicides, for example. Let's just talk about herbicides. And the reason is because we've got little robotic tractors that can, or little robots that can move through a field, identify the weeds and pull them individually. And we have places where the similar robots can identify which plants have infestations of insects that are causing them trouble and deal with that in that location alone. And do it quickly enough that the infestation doesn't spread. And we have other things of that nature where we can have different agriculture. We could have systems that are no longer monocropped. And I find myself, having grown up from kindergarten to 8th grade, I was living most of the time in Illinois, and I always lived in close proximity to cornfields. So I think I know what a cornfield looks like and how they operate. And I can tell you that since that time, cornfields always had problems because they're monocropped. But since that time, they have become basically toxic waste dumps because of the chemicals that are thrown at them. They have herbicides, they have insecticides, they have fungicides, they have all kinds of things thrown at them that are not good for life of anything really aside from the corn plant. The idea is kill everything except the corn. And unfortunately, killing everything except the corn means that that place is covered with toxic materials. Some of it will run off into streams and rivers, making them toxic. Some of them just hang around, being toxic. And my hope is that we will be able to move into times when that kind of thing is not necessary anymore. And yes, that's what it is. So we've come to the end of the show. I'm going to show you the last slide. The last slide says, have a brilliantly successful week. Well, that's a good sentiment. I'm sorry that Tom isn't here today. He wasn't able to make it. He's still in good health, but I feel a deep regret that his cat can't wave goodbye to you. But I'll wave goodbye, and Tom would if he were here. Come back next week, and I'll have a show for you then. Bye-bye.